Recently, there have been signs that Brazil may yet act to save the Amazon. Elsewhere on the planet, that chance is already lost, and the fears of the Kayapo are a reality. In Africa, most of the great forests are cut down, and tribal life is shattered. When British colonial governments built the Kariba Dam, they flooded the Zambezi Valley and drove thousands of Tonga from their land. Here's the story of one of them, Mrs. Kapandura, in her own words.
What do I remember? Is it about happiness that you want to know? We had a wonderful life in the Zambezi Valley. We lived with the blessings of our God, Nyami Nyami, a big snake with the head of a fish. He lived in the river. When we were hungry, he gave us food from his body. We lived as we wanted. The river brought us happiness. There were so many fish, we could never catch them all. There were so many animals in the forest, the hunters always brought back something to eat. The harvests were good. Even during the dry season, we could grow crops. The granaries were full, as big as a hut. We had big heaps of millet. Everywhere people were laughing. We were happy, well fed. Then they came with big machinery, and they built a wall. They closed the river. The water came up and up. It flooded our gardens. It drowned our forests. Our valley was gone. All that is left of our valley is dead trees. We had to leave. We had to go far away from the water, where the land is dry. In the river valley, we were strong and healthy. We grew maize and sweet potatoes. But here, the harvests are small. Almost nothing will grow. What we do grow doesn't taste good at all. Here, the children are not healthy. Often there is no food and their stomachs grumble. Sometimes they go to the husk heaps looking for seeds. There is no happiness in what we eat. Here there is no life. There is no river with fish. There is nothing which you can do and claim that it is yours, that it belongs to the people. Our villages are small. Our families are not all together in one place. I can hardly remember all the things to tell. I am told there are fishing camps, but they are far, far away, by the lake where our valley used to be. The children are healthier and happier there. Some of our men travel there to fish and to make money. Sometimes my son goes to fish, but he works for another man and earns little. Not many of our men have money for a boat or even for nets.
I'm not sure. Pt.2, that's 26.
But for some men, the fishing is good. They make money. They feed their children. I don't think my life on this land will ever be good. But at least my children are learning new ways to live here. In our village, a woman came from the city. Her name is Stella. She can't bring back the valley, but she gives us hope. I think she came here out of love, to help us have better food, to help us have a better life. She teaches the women and children. She is our friend.
I see a lot of progress among women. The dedication women have, especially for our children. Because I believe if a child has got a clever mother, an intelligent mother, the child will be successful as well. And I think you know that there's this say where that if you educate a woman, you've educated the whole family. They are intelligent women who can do something. Like myself, I was not highly educated, but because I got people who helped me to really bring out my potentials, I'm here now trying to help other women. So that belief, I still have it. I believe that if a person is shown how to do it, no matter you didn't go very far with school, but you can do something. Actually, what we are trying to do here is to encourage the community to plant more groundnuts and beans, crops which really gives protein to the children. I have a feeling that people, they know exactly what they want. So why can't you ask the person to participate and hear her views? Maybe what you think is a problem to them is not a problem to them. They understand their culture better than anybody else coming from outside.
For me, there will always be sadness. But my children's future is here, and their children's as well. Still, I don't want them to forget Nyami Nyami. He is the creator of the Zambezi River. He is its power. The only way of overcoming him was to use big machines to push him to the middle of the lake and close up the river. But you cannot say that was the end of Nyami Nyami. He is still there, from the mouth of the river to its source.
Looking at the world from this perspective, it's a little easier to see how all of nature is connected. Snowfall in the Himalayas affects rainfall across the ocean in the United States. When trees are cut down here, the water supply is affected here. Like the Tonga, the people of Egypt have a dam, but they're just beginning to see its full impact on their lives and on the river that supports them, the Nile. Without it, all of Egypt would be this.
Endless desert. Mile after mile of searing rock and sand, harsh and ungiving. But as it flows from the Ethiopian hills, the Nile pushes the desert back, forming a lush green ribbon of life. The Nile Valley, where nearly all of Egypt's people live on just a tiny fraction of their country's land. The Nile is Egypt. For more than 7,000 years, those closest to the river and soil have been the soul of their country. The Nile's farmers and fishermen have always been able to feed their people, fitting into the rhythms of the great river, working in harmony with its ebbs and flows. Each spring, the Nile would swell, spilling its waters over the valley. When the waters receded, every farmer's land was blessed with a new, thick layer of rich silt. This cycle of death and rebirth inspired Egyptian mythology and religion. Between harvests, the farmers raised the pyramids to celebrate their reborn world. No great civilization would have existed here without the Nile. To lay out their canals for irrigation, the ancient Egyptians invented geometry. To keep track of the river's annual flooding, they created a calendar with 365 days. From the papyrus reeds along the riverbanks, they made the world's first paper and evolved a written language. Into the middle of this century, the Nile provided for all of Egypt's people. But then their self-sufficiency was threatened. More mouths to feed. more land needed for homes, more industry, and greater demands on the faithful Nile. Egypt faced a crucial choice. Find new ways of working with the Nile's natural rhythms, or change them. Instead of building on the past success of its farmers, Egypt looked to the future promise of technology. The Aswan High Dam, hailed as a savior of Egypt and source of everlasting prosperity. Behind it, the enormous man-made Lake Nasser, visible even from the moon. In the name of progress, Egypt tried to control the river's natural power and abruptly altered the Nile's long history. After tens of thousands of years, the cycle was broken. No more annual flooding. Now, controlled release of the water year-round. Now, constant irrigation, 2 crops each year instead of 1. And more water pumped into the desert to create new farmland. But since the dam was completed in 1970, many people are realizing that there's a limit to what we can take from nature and a limit to the benefits of technology. The silt, which used to flow down and rejuvenate Egypt's farmland, is now trapped in Lake Nasser. Now Egypt must use costly artificial fertilizer, and ironically, the high dam's electric power is needed to produce it. The lack of silt downstream is also causing the Nile's banks to recede, and the delta is washing away. The blessing of modern irrigation has its price. The fertile soil is wearing out. Egypt's swelling population quickly consumes the high dam's benefits, both food and electric power. Supplying this electric power has only increased the demand for more. More power leads to more industrial and urban sprawl. Cities spread out, engulfing farmland along the river. Today, there's less farmland than there was just a generation ago. The days of self-sufficiency are over. More than half the country's food is imported. And Egypt's people continue to multiply. The Nile has carried Egypt's burdens through the centuries. But harnessed to meet the demands of a modern world, its powers are nearly exhausted. Since the dawn of recorded time, the farmers and fishermen have been able to live from the Nile. But for how much longer?
The struggles of our planet are by no means confined to the Third World. North America's largest river, the Mississippi, falls entirely within the borders of the United States. But these borders have not protected her. The impact of industry is felt from one end of the Mississippi to the other. Among those who feel the impact is another man who's made a choice to try and better his world. Like the ancient fisherman of the Nile, he knows that the future of his river is his future.
The bayou, a remote, isolated world. Here, people blend in with nature. Milton Calm used to roam these swamps and bayous as a boy. He grew up here. For him, there's a deep, personal connection.
When I'm out on the bayou by myself, I really feel at peace with myself. You know, I feel closer, close to the earth. I feel good about myself. I just feel. It's a hard feeling to describe, really. I mean, but just put it, say you feel at peace and you feel good about yourself. I love this river. I love these lakes. I love these more than life.
Southern Louisiana is where the Mississippi River fans out to form a vast pattern of bayous and marshes, a natural buffer between the mainland and the open sea.
This whole delta system of ours on the Mississippi River was created because the Mississippi River flowed over its banks every year and created these marshes. This is silt that comes all the way from the mid-continent of the United States.
For Milton, the Delta is not just a place to live. It's a way of life. And there are lots of Delta folks who feel the way Milton does.
How long we got left?
Oh, we're doing fine, man. About another minute, I'm going to cut this noise out.
Okay, man, all right. All right, people, I think it's about time for us to eat. Everybody's ready? Ready! All right, look good, let's go. Let's start with the crab first, and then we'll hit the shrimp and the jambalaya. All right, it look good.
This is more than a gathering of friends and relatives. It's a celebration of kinship with the bayous and marshlands. The food is just a part of what the Mississippi River feeds their lives. The feelings they get from the Delta are passed down through generations.
all of this has always formed a way of life with with the people, for gathering together with your families and your friends and everything else. First thing you know, we're not going to have any of them, and it's going to be because of our negligence of not wanting to get involved and taking everything for granted. Once it's lost, it's going to be gone, and hell, we have nobody to blame but ourselves.
One reason it might be lost is that these people and millions of others live right on the edge of another kind of world. In fact, most of them work here, in the country's largest industrial complex based on oil and natural gas. This, too, is life in the Delta, and Milton himself earned his living as part of it.
I was basically a mechanic for the last 25 years. I worked at all of the chemical plants. So I was pipe fitter, I was cleaning columns and vessels, more or less like a rustabout does in the oil fields. In the 50s, I was with an oil refinery in Destrehan, and they shut their doors while I was in the service in 1958. In the early 60s, I went to work for DuPont.
Well, we know we live in an industrial corridor. There's these plants with all this hazardous materials, and we know the potential is there. 6 weeks ago, we had this explosion, and it really brought it home that, some of the problems that we're faced with. And this explosion was just one of them.
The explosion ripped through the refinery at Norco, and at least 2,800 people were evacuated. Residents living next to the refinery were among the injured. Officials say the blast occurred in a catalytic cracker, a device for converting crude oil to gasoline. The force of the explosion set off burglar alarms and broke windows 20 miles away in New Orleans, where some residents said the explosion felt like an earthquake.
It concerns me, It affects the younger kids, and it affects their sleeping. They can't get adjusted. They don't really know what's going on, and the adults, can kind of cope with it. In time, they can kind of deal with it. But that's a problem that we have down here. That it just happens all too often.
When a similar accident happened several years ago where Milton worked, it changed his life.
The damn thing exploded, and I was just like I was frozen in my footsteps. I couldn't move, and I could see this big old fireball coming over me and big old tongues of flame falling out of this fireball, and I still couldn't move. So it wasn't until someone else just hollered at me and get the hell out of here that I decided to move. Several of my friends and people that I work with were killed, and I got shook up pretty bad. And I stayed there, and we helped rebuild the plant, rebuild the unit, and I guess a couple of years after that, I just decided that after 30 years in and around these chemical plants, I figured I would just hang it up.
Milton retired from his job, but instead of relaxing, he took up a full-time cause. He returned to the place he's loved since childhood. He came to give the Delta something back. Without any special training, he became an environmentalist. Now he comes here with people who bring technical and scientific knowledge to show them what he's seen. He's launched his boat countless times to travel up and down the bayou for hunting and fishing, but these days the trips have an urgent purpose. Today he brings a chemist, Wilma Subra, so she can document changes in the waters here. It's his way of learning and trying to make a difference. A Louisiana native like Milton doesn't need scientific evidence to know that things aren't what they used to be. It's still beautiful, but once there were many more signs and sounds of life. Fish jumping in the water, animals and birds along the banks. Now, in many places, a strange, terrible silence. Nature's delicate harmony has been tipped out of balance. Up ahead, where the waters of Bayou Trepagna begin to flow, an oil refinery has been dumping wastewater for 50 years. Even if companies are complying with regulations, damage to the water is spreading and restrictions need to be tighter.
Looks pretty icky there, Wilma.
Yeah, look all the floating scum. Smell it? It's not a normal smell either.
It's the greenest, some of the dirtiest I've seen. See, every now and then the pipe, the discharge on your left comes out even greener than normal.
Yeah.
The one on the right is not as bad.
Oh, good, okay. Hold it a second.
All right.
Let me get ready.
Might be
Okay.
disappearing just a little bit, but I
Can you
believe
get
we
it over
us
here a
pretty
little
good
bit?
Sample, all right.
Okay.
Well, I just got concerned when I've seen too many changes happen in too short a period of time. You know, a lot of pollution, things were just disappearing much too fast. The marshes deteriorated, the hunting, fishing got poorer, and I just decided that, hey, had to be reasons why. So I became involved, tried to educate myself as to, what the problems were.
That'll do it. Thank you. Okay, why don't we go get the other sample?
Pretty icky.
Smell it.
It smells purity, oil, and hydrocarbons, and everything under the sun. It's got a terrific odor. What's been showing up in these things, Wilma?
Chromium,
Chromium?
a lot of the other heavy metals, but the chromium's really high.
And how thick is this sludge?
6 feet.
6 feet down. You have to realize if there are hazardous materials in the area that you're fishing, then it stands to reason that the marine life that you're taking from that body of water does have some potential to it. And some of my main concerns are some of these heavy metals that are in this bayou. If they would ever get into the chain of marine life, then we would suffer. I would hate to think of eating a crab that is full of chromium and lead.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Over here. Look what I got for you. Give me another piece of chicken.
That sucker looks big, ain't it?
He is big. Come on, baby.
Yeah, feed him the
Pete,
chicken.
come on. Come on, Pete. Let's go way up. Way up. See, you're lazy today. You're a lazy rascal.
I don't know if I can do that just yet, Annie. I'm going to stand inside the boat and let you do the feeding. I'm just going to pass them on to you.
Come on, baby. Wait till you see Pete. I think he's on the other side. Come on, Isabel. Come on, baby.
How much will he eat? Will he eat a whole chicken?
Oh, he'll eat more than a whole chicken. Now, listen, get your nose up. Get your nose up. Right here. That's it. That's my girl. It's a Pete. Oh, here comes Pete. Here comes Pete. That's it.
We got
Here
another
he comes.
one coming.
Come on, Pete.
Annie Miller has spent most of her life out here as a trapper. She's worried too, concerned about the future of her friends like Isabel and Pete. It's people like her and Milton, people close to this place, who can best see what's being lost.
And I've noticed that the difference, you know, as we're coming down this bayou, the difference in the trees and the vegetation. What has happened in this area?
Well, I'll tell you, I think we're getting quite a bit of, well, look at this water, salt water intrusion in here. At one
Is that
time,
what's killing the trees? And you
that's
see a
what's
lot of
killing
dead
the trees. That's what's killing the trees. People think it's the moss. It's not the moss. This moss is not a parasite. What's doing the damage is saltwater intrusion in here. And we're getting more and more as time goes on. So, of course, it's doing a lot of damage.
Salt water comes in through canals made for industry and development. It flows into the marsh, killing plants that hold the soil. 50 square miles of marshlands and wildlife are lost each year.
Now, we used to have a huge rookery to the right up here. It was tremendous. And you had great egrets, you had snow egrets, you had Louisiana heron, you had the little blue heron. Oh, just a mixture of birds, hundreds and hundreds of them.
And it's just all gone?
It's all gone.
The whole
It's
thing
all
is
gone,
just
the whole thing. It's all gone.
This is the largest wintering grounds, the largest concentration of migratory birds in the whole nation. And if we lose all of these marshes and we lose all of these wetlands, the people up in Canada and in Minnesota and in the northern states, they're going to have fewer birds for one thing. They're going to have no more ducks. So, you know, if we lose our habitat down here in Louisiana, then it has to affect the breeding grounds up in Minnesota and Canada.
You know, we're losing something like, 1 acre of fresh marshland every 16 minutes. And
so.
scientists say that if this destruction continues at this present rate, there will not be land left south of New Orleans in 50 years. And I can believe it. I'll show you in a little while.
Home will cease to exist in a
All
matter
my
of time.
Raceland will be gone.
Will be gone. That's
All
the
of it.
problem we're facing. You know, we have
Yes.
the same problem that, you know, we can't get people to realize what's happening. Everybody thinks this is a slow process. It's going to take hundreds of years, but hell, we can witness it because we come out here all the time. Start our tree planting, you know, up in here.
Milton Kahn has found an answer. It's something simple, something he can do with his own hands.
When did you plant this one, Milton?
Oh, I planted that last week.
It's not a big, massive program. It can't get lost in government red tape.
But it looks like, you know, it's worked good.
nobody has messed with it, and it's still fairly solid. So I think that's a good idea.
It's growing already because I didn't have any green on it earlier.
So I think if we finish putting these here, I think we have a good start.
Okay.
So
It's a way of giving nature a chance to revive itself.
People is the key. In other words, if we're going to get it, if we're going to get anything done, people have to get involved. I mean, that's the bottom line. Just numbers. Plant a few trees. Find the problems. Encourage others to do it. You don't have to worry about like trying to save the whole world. Just try to do it one little bit. And I think all of us can make a significant, contribution.
Well, it's really filling in. You can see you're already getting emergent.
In another year and a half, it should close at least across its mouth with those with that Spartina.
The urgency of the problem keeps growing, but Milton won't give up.
We're running out of time, and time is not on our side now, and so we're fighting the time. We have to quit all of the studies and start implementing some of the things that we know will help. And these are some of the things that I'm trying to plot our government into cutting some of the red tape. Let's implement some of the things we do know, how to correct some of them.
I think probably in 40 years, I think that the production of oil in Louisiana will cease, or at least it'll cease to be a major contributor to our economy. And if we've sacrificed our fishing industry at the expense of the oil and gas, then we're going to be looked at as being very, very foolish. All of us have to live on this earth. I think industry and government, everybody has to realize we have to take the necessary steps to live on this planet. There's no dumping it or any ocean or any river. It's just too closely related. Every one of us has to do our part, and we all have to participate in it.
Rather than just a dying landscape, I can see a little bit of life. And so I know what I'm doing, is right because I can see. And if we can just get more people encouraged to, to go on ahead and do it, then I know I will at least have succeeded to that extent. And that's going to make me feel damn good.
The well-being of our planet rests on us. The threats to the Ganges, Amazon, Zambezi, Nile, and Mississippi are not isolated problems. Environmental damage is worldwide. Customs and cultures are in danger. The health and survival of millions of people are at stake. The danger is not so much from war, famine, or epidemic, as from the everyday activities of our fellow human beings. In 1987, world population passed 5 billion. It will be 6 billion by the end of the century. People multiply, resources do not. We all depend on the same water, land, and air. Rich people or poor, Rich countries or poor, we all share the same fate, the same future. And in our search for a better life, we may be doing damage we cannot repair. Somehow we must find a way to share the world's wealth. It is the actions of each individual which will make a difference.
The people we've just met around the world, Mishra, Paya Khan, Stella, and Milton, are all heroes. They're warriors, but not in the traditional sense. They've transformed positive thought into positive action. They've done that by way of thinking beyond themselves and by changing the way they look at our world. They see that when we try to conquer nature, we only defeat ourselves. The journey we just took to a world without borders does not have to end. The only real borders are in our minds. We can go on with this journey by seeing and thinking in a new way. When you draw water from a tap, think about the river or lake it comes from. Think about the planetary waters whose future will determine our own. Think about the spiritual connection to water and to nature of the people we've just met. Our planet will not be saved by any one big decision, but by many individual choices, choices by people like you and me. We may be the last generation with enough time to make these choices. Think about it.